Welcome to the June 2023 FPV New Product Roundup. I'm going to take you through some of the newest, hottest products to come out in the world of FPV this month. And we're going to start with two products from my friends over at Rotor Riot. The first one is the Rotor Riot FPV backpack. And I'm excited about this product because, well, I love backpacks and storage and that kind of thing. And it's been a long time since something really exciting has happened in this space. There have been a few new backpacks that have come out and none of them have really blown me away. But the Rotor Riot FPV backpack has me legitimately excited. It's got a couple, first of all, it doesn't have any major missteps and it's got a couple of innovative features. And I always like to see innovation just because it's nice to see people not just doing derivative stuff and copying other people all the time. One of the pieces of innovation is this compartment. It's not a normal side compartment. Rather, it is an opening that lets you reach into the inside of the bag and get your goggles out. And the idea here is what Sean Morrison, the main designer of the bag, calls the rip and dip, where you just show up somewhere, grab your goggles, grab your controller, fly a pack, and then get the heck out of there. This isn't totally innovative. Photography bags have had this feature for letting you pull out your camera without opening up your whole bag for a long time, but it's the first time I've seen it in an FPV bag, and it's nice to see somebody thinking outside the box. I've actually got a full review of the Rotor Riot backpack that came out just a couple hours ago, and I will put a link to that down in the video description if you want to check it out. The other Rotor Riot product that I am excited about this month is the Rotor Riot Vision 40. Now, this is a 1S or 2S Tiny Whoop style drone with the Walk Snail video transmitter on it. And the reason I'm so excited about it is because I really feel like the Walk Snail 1S video transmitter is pushing new boundaries in the capabilities of Tiny Whoop video. Of course, we used to have analog video we still do, but we used to have only analog video transmitters, and they didn't have great range or penetration, but they were light and they could run off a 1S battery. Then HDZero came along with the HDZero 1S video transmitter, and it is light and has good image quality, but not that much more range or penetration when compared to analog. The Walk Snail has significantly better range and penetration than analog and significantly better image quality. And for those who care more about image quality, range, and penetration than the HDZero smooth frame rate and low latency, this is really exciting. But the Vision 40 gets things right, not just in its video system. You see, one of the reasons why you don't do this is the weight. These quadcopters come out and they're heavy and they don't have great response and they don't fly great. But Rotor Riot has really freaking nailed this. The Vision 40 has 1002 motors, and for whatever reason, this combination works really freaking well. I got to fly it at Rampage, and even Aaron Ciotti flew it, and he usually is really a snob for ultra lightweight Tiny Whoops. This one doesn't fly exactly like a 20-gram 65mm Whoop, but the power to weight ratio is really good, and you can really do stuff with it. It's not underpowered for its weight. You can tell the weight's there, but it's got enough power to sling it around, to do power loops, not hit the ground. I'm working on a full review of this. I'm super impressed with it. And if you're looking for a digital, even the 1S, don't even get the 2S version. The 1S version is so freaking good. I'm really, really impressed with it. As we get into the products, just a reminder that we have links to all of these products down in the video description below, as well as timestamps. So if you're wanting to look for a particular product, you can just scroll along the timeline down at the bottom of the video, or go down to the video description to look and click on the timestamps. Those links below are affiliate links. What that means is that when you click any of those links and then make a purchase at the affiliated vendor, I get a small commission, and it's a very, very easy way for you to support the work that I'm doing here. Before you make any purchase, go click one of those affiliate links, check out, doesn't cost you anything, I get a little commission, right? Why not? Next, we're going to take a look at flight controllers and ESCs, and we're going to start with this Neutron RC AT32 flight controller and its corresponding ESC. And what makes this flight controller interesting is the AT32. You see, every flight controller that you're probably using, well, Betaflight, iNav, obviously, if you fly Pixhawker, that's a different story. But every flight controller you're probably using has an STM32 chip on it as its main processor. Sometimes they're an STM32 F4, sometimes they're an F7, sometimes they're an H7. There are various different models of the STM32 processor coming in at various capabilities and price points. But what makes this flight controller exciting is that the AT32 chip is significantly cheaper and more available than the STM32 chips, and Betaflight has just added support for the AT32 chip. Sort of. For the time being, if you were to buy this flight controller, you would only be able to run a custom build of Betaflight put out by Neutron RC. But the Betaflight devs are integrating support for this, and Betaflight 4.5 is expected to have full support for this chip. And that will be very exciting because you can see this is a $42 flight controller, and that used to be normal. Now it's freaking unheard of. Flight controllers are all $60, $65, $70, $80 or maybe more. Having a flight controller come in at $40 is freaking impressive. And you might be wondering, like, how much are the STM32 chips in the first place that just replacing this one component with something cheaper brings the price of the whole flight controller down? Well, remember, you've got wholesale markup and retail markup. So if you change the price of the bill of materials by, let's say, $10, that's going to equate to maybe a $30 or $40 difference in the actual retail price. And that's pretty substantial. But don't jump on this just yet, because first of all, for the time being, only Neutron RC is making flight controllers with this chip on it. That may change in the future, but for now, we don't know a lot about Neutron RC. We don't know if this is actually a good flight controller that's worth using. For the time being, Betaflight doesn't support it. You have to run a custom build of Betaflight, so anything you might want to flash or change, you would be limited in your ability to do that until Betaflight 4.5 comes out. And this is a pretty big deal to add the code to support this chip to Betaflight, and I think that it's more likely than average that Betaflight 4.5 will have some bugs related to their support for this chip. That's not a slight on any developers or not throwing shade. It's just statistically, when you add a big change like this, the very first release that has that support is more likely to have some bugs. So this is an exciting development for the future, but maybe isn't as immediately relevant as it might be, but keep your eye out in the future for new flight controllers with this AT32 chip on it and ESCs. Next up, we've got two new toothpick-style flight controllers from T-Motor. Toothpick-style flight controller means that they have 25mm mounting and they have built-in ESC and flight controller all in one board. They are more commonly used on small quadcopters, like some of them are as small as tiny whoops, although these flight controllers have 35 amp and 45 amp ESCs, so that's way overkill for a tiny whoop. The place where you might see these used would be on like a 3-inch toothpick at the very smallest, or moving on up into the ultra lightweight 3-inch, 3.5-inch, and maybe even 4 or 5-inch category. But don't go thinking you can just take one of these and slap it on your typical 5-inch freestyle quad. Once you've got the room and the weight capacity to have a traditional flight controller and ESC stack, the separate flight controller and ESC are going to serve you much better. They're going to be more durable, and they're going to be cheaper to replace if some component breaks. But for something like a sub 250 gram 3-inch or 3.5-inch, for something like a lightweight long-range cruiser where you really need to save weight and save space, this style of flight controller is really ideal. And these coming from T-Motor, T-Motor generally makes pretty good flight controllers and ESCs, so having a sort of a high-quality choice from a manufacturer you probably can trust, that's why we're focusing on them in this video. Next up, we've got the Flywoo Goku GN745 Evo HD all-in-one flight controller and ESC. This one's exciting because it's actually a 20mm form factor instead of the 25mm toothpick design. So it's going to be mountable in some frames that don't have 20mm mounting, and overall it's going to be smaller and easier to fit into your frame. I've always been a big fan of the Flywoo Goku all-in-ones. I think they do a really good job. It can be really difficult to solder to a lot of these all-in-ones. They just don't have a lot of room for the solder pads, and it's a struggle to solder them up. But Flywoo has always done a really good job making the most of their pad layout. We've got easy to access plus and minus pads. The motor pads are easy to access. They're big, they're chunky, they're durable. The other pads are not even labeled, so you will be referring to the wiring diagram when trying to solder it up, and you may struggle a little bit, but what are you going to do? There's a plug for DJI video transmitter or digital video transmitter, and there are some LED outputs as well. Wait a minute. Whoa. No. Those aren't plugs. Oh my God. I'm sorry, I misread that. Those are actual built-in LEDs. That's super cute. You could just, since they're there, why not light them up, play with them? That's really nice. Finishing up the flight controller and ESC section, we've got one more all-in-one ESC, and this one comes in the budget category. For $80, you can get the GEPRC Taker F411. This is a 2 to 4S all-in-one, so this is definitely going to be more for the toothpick style and not for the bigger 3.5 inch, 4 inch. It has a 12 amp ESC. So you're not going to push this too hard. But if you are building something like a 3-inch toothpick, being able to get a flight controller and ESC for $80 is unfortunately a good deal these days. GEPRC has done a pretty good job with the motor outputs. We've got nice pads to solder to. Everything is labeled, reasonably easy to put together. And what the hell is this? That's either a receiver or a video transmitter. Oh my God, it's got built-in Express LRS 2.4 gigahertz receiver built in. That's even more exciting. It's a little disappointing that it's an SPI-based receiver and not a serial-based receiver. And if you want to know why I say that, I'll put a link in the video description below to my Why Express LRS SPI Receivers Suck video. But it's better than nothing, and it is usable, and that's pretty freaking cool. $80. Flight controller, ESC, receiver. All you need is a video transmitter and you are ready to go. Next up, we're going to look at video transmitters and cameras, and there's only one item in this category today, and it is the Foxeer HDZero Digital VTX. And the reason this is exciting is because it is the first time that anyone other than HDZero has made an HDZero video transmitter. So the promise of HDZero has always been that HDZero will sell these chips to anybody and they can make HDZero devices. It doesn't have to all come from HDZero, but we haven't seen a lot of actual manifestation of that in the real world. There have been a couple vendors who have made HDZero receivers. HDZero goggles, Emax has a set of HDZero goggles, and FreeSky has a controller with an HDZero receiver built in. But nobody has made a video transmitter, and that's a shame because in some ways, like the HDZero goggles, boom, they're amazing. It's going to be really hard to compete with them. That's just what you want if you fly HDZero seriously. But there are a lot of ways in which I wish the HDZero video transmitters were better. Like, for example, we've got the 1-watt freestyle VTX, but it doesn't have as much range and penetration as you might want. So maybe I'd like to have a 2-watt video transmitter or a 3-watt. Why is no one making that? I don't know. This video transmitter from Foxeer is pretty much the same as the equivalent video transmitter made by HDZero. It's slightly smaller in form factor, and perhaps there are some differences in the way that it's manufactured that make it maybe more durable, maybe less durable. I have no idea. But functionally, there's not a lot of reason to choose this over the HDZero VTX, except maybe it's going to be in stock when the HDZero one isn't. Nevertheless, it's pretty exciting to see a manufacturer making an HDZero VTX that isn't HDZero, and I would love to see more actual innovation in this space instead of just kind of releasing the same VTX that HDZero already makes. But kudos, I shouldn't be too hard on Foxeer because at least they did it, and I wish more people would. Next, we're going to take a look at bind and fly quadcopters, and the first one we're going to look at is from DarwinFPV. This is pretty exciting. DarwinFPV has made a name for themselves with reasonably priced, okay value Like, they're not the best quadcopters out there, but when you look at what you paid for them and what you got, you're pretty freaking happy. That's my take on it anyway. And the DarwinFPV Baby Ape II is their entry in the 3.5-inch freestyle category. So we've seen the DarwinFPV Baby Ape before, which is a 3-inch. I think it fits more in the toothpick category. Coming up to 3.5 inches gives you just that little bit more power and just that little bit more ability to carry a heavier battery, or maybe carry an HD camera, a very light HD camera, not a full-size GoPro, but just gives you a little bit more. You're approaching the larger quadcopter feel without exceeding that 250-gram weight limit. Is it under 250 grams? It damn well better be. Weight? Oh yeah, weight 151 grams or 240 grams with a battery, or 224 grams for the analog version. Oh yeah, that's the other thing that's exciting about it. You can order it with an analog VTX, which is fine, or you can order it with a DJI-compatible RunCam Link VTX. No walk snail or O3 or anything like that for the time being, but it's nice that they've got the digital version as well. I gotta say, they sell it in both 4S and 6S, and I feel like 3.5 inches is right on the line where 6S might start to make sense. But for the most part, I would recommend anybody getting this get the 4S version, because when you go to 6S, you've got a much smaller cell size. So they don't even sell a 6S battery here, right? So what 6S battery are you going to use? A 4S 850, 4 out of 6 is 0.666, right? So 850 times 0.666, it would be about a 560 milliamp hour 8S. And those 550, 560 milliamp hour cells are getting down to the point where, like, they're just not, it's so difficult to make them good, because they're so freaking small. Whereas in the 850 milliamp hour to 1000 milliamp hour category, it's easier to get a good quality cell. So I think that I would definitely take the 4S version of this and stay away from the 6S, but I guess it's up to you. Next up, we've got the BetaFPV Pavo Pico, and it is available in both an O3 and a walk snail avatar version. But I think the O3 version is the real star here, because let's just pull up an image here. What this is a Cinewhoop that is designed around the idea of leaving off the GoPro. You see, when you've got the DJI O3 Air unit, it's capable of doing high-quality onboard recording, up to 4K resolution. And although the results aren't as good as an actual GoPro or a GoPro really is what you would compare it to, many people feel that the results are good enough for their uses. Certainly if you're just posting to YouTube, but I even see some professionals doing like real estate fly-throughs and commercials, and they're able to get usable footage out of the O3 Air unit. And that means you can have a much smaller, much lighter aircraft with longer flight time, less struggle on the motors. You can just get a lot more out of it. As far as the walk snail version goes, walk snail also has onboard recording, and perhaps it has good enough results for some people, but I don't know any professionals who are using the onboard recording of the walk snail VTX. But I do know professionals who are using the onboard recording of the DJI O3. Nevertheless, it's nice to see a little variety here. And I think it shows, it's really exciting to see the way that the O3 is changing the way people think about micro quads. Maybe you don't need a GoPro. And if you didn't need a GoPro, how would you design a quad around that? That's the question that the Pavo Pico is designed to answer. I've actually got one of these on the way, and I'll be reviewing it and trying it out for myself. So reserve judgment until then. Last up in this category is the Flywoo Firefly 1S DC16. And you may be familiar with the Flywoo Firefly 2S Nano. That is a 2-inch quadcopter that runs on 2S batteries. I reviewed them and I liked them a lot. The Firefly 1S DC16 is a 1S 1.6-inch prop. So if you wanted something like that, but even smaller, running on a 1S battery. This category has really taken off, and it's kind of a weird category because a lot of times when you go down to props this small, you would want prop guards. You'd be talking about something that looks more like a Cinewhoop. But a lot of people are saying, what if we just took the prop guards off and we made a little 1.6-inch acro quadcopter? And that's what this is. You could compare it to things like the Odinata or the Rotor Riot Babito. They all fit into this category. The nice thing about the Flywoo is that it's actually available with HDZero, analog, or walk snail, so take your pick of which video transmission system you want. DJI is going to be out. You're going to need to go up to the 2S because these are just too small to carry. Even a naked air unit, I suppose, is what Flywoo has determined. I actually have these in a box waiting for me to review them. And I'm really excited about it because this is a fun category. I wonder, though, like, are you going to fly this inside your house? Like somebody would, Bubby would. But unless you're a really good pilot, you're going to be bouncing off the walls. And since you don't have prop guards, you're going to be breaking props, you're going to be breaking motors, and you're going to be messing up your furniture and your walls. Would you fly it outdoors? The 2S flew fine outdoors, even in a little bit of wind. Is this going to be able to fly outdoors? I don't know. That's, I think, the big thing. Where does this fit in like where you're going to fly it and what you're going to be able to do with it? Have to fly it to find out. We've got one entry in the category of motors today, and it is a new Tiny Whoop motor from WeBleedFPV. Now, WeBleedFPV has been a leader in the high KV Tiny Whoop motor category, and I certainly don't want to take credit away from anybody else. Like, for example, Tiny Whoop, the brand Tiny Whoop, has also been doing high KV motors. But what makes these WeBleedFPV motors different is that they have a new knurled shaft design. So if we look at this picture, here is a traditional smooth motor shaft, and here is the WeBleedFPV knurled shaft. And that knurling means that the shaft can grip the motor bell with more authority. See, one of the problems that I'm told you run into when you start going to these ultra high KV motors is that there's actually slippage between the bell and the shaft, and this solves that. So here we can see a side view of the motor, and here is the place where the shaft is pressed into the bell and where the bell might slip. But this knurling gives additional grip and keeps that from happening. And what WeBleed has said is that this will allow them to push the KV even higher. How much higher than like 30,000 KV do you need to go? Well, apparently some people feel you need to go higher. This is the ViFly Whoopstor V3. And if you want to know what makes it so great, you can watch my review of the Whoopstor V2. I'll put a link down in the video description. But the short version is, like most Tiny Whoop chargers, they're like, just plug your battery in and we'll charge it. They don't have a lot of configurability like big chargers. And it's nice that it's simple because you don't need a lot of configurability with Tiny Whoop batteries. But like, for example, most Tiny Whoop battery chargers don't have the ability to put the battery to storage voltage. And that means that when you put your batteries away at the end of a flight session, maybe they're fully charged, maybe they're fully discharged. Either way, they get worn out and they suck and they die sooner than you wish that they would. The Whoopstor can put the batteries at storage voltage. That's nice. It also has adjustable current. In fact, the V3 can go up to, I think it's 1.3 amps. Yes, 1.3 amps per port. So if you have larger 450 milliamp hour or 500 milliamp hour 1S batteries, this will be able to charge them quickly. But frankly, 1.3 amps, even going into like a 400 milliamp hour or a 300 milliamp hour battery, that's only like 4C. That's actually not like the worst. So if you were in a super hurry, you could probably charge them at 1.3 amps and get it back in the air. It's adjustable. It has a really nice readout. It works with both BT 2.0 and PH 2.0 plugs. The new V3 version has a nice plastic shell. It's rated for 6S. It can take power either from USB PD, an XT60, or a DC barrel plug. It's just everything you could freaking want from a Whoop charger. The only reason to hesitate at all is that it's $32. Now, for what you get, I think that's more than worth it, but some people would like, I'll just buy a little $12 micro charger that plugs into my USB port, and that's fine. But if you have $32 to spend on your charger, this is hands down the one to get. This next product is pretty weird for a lot of different reasons. This is the FLyfishRC dual-manned antenna for DJI O3. And it's weird because Why is FLyfishRC making an aftermarket antenna for the DJI O3 Air unit? FLyfishRC makes frames. But okay, they've made this antenna. Why do I need this antenna and not, why can't I just buy any antenna? The answer to that question is the most interesting thing. You see, the DJI O3 Air unit has linear polarized antennas, and the DJI Goggles 2 and Integra have linear polarized antennas, which means that if you were to buy aftermarket antennas, they would probably be circular polarized, and then you would get a small reduction in range because of the mismatched polarization between your goggles and the aircraft. This is the only aftermarket antenna I'm aware of for the DJI O3 Air unit that has the same linear polarization as the factory antenna. So why not just use the factory antenna? Well, what makes these antennas different are the different lengths that they're available. So the longest one is 145 millimeters total length with a 95 millimeter tube, and that's going to let you get the antenna just a little further away from your frame to get a little better range. They've also got a 40 millimeter stubby version that tucks the antenna in for maximum durability. And that's flexibility that you don't get with the O3 stock antenna. For those who are looking for race gates, and specifically multi-GP style race gates, normally you would go to the multigp.com website. At least that's where I would go. That's where I bought mine from, and that's fine. But where else could you go? Sometimes they're out of stock. I don't know. Sometimes you just want the option to go somewhere else. Well, 533, Evan Turner's company, has race gates available through their website. This is nice. They are in 533 colors. They're co-branded with GemFan or HQ, mostly GemFan it seems. Okay, fine. So if you're looking for 5 foot by 5 foot multi-GP style gates or 7 by 6 foot, is that for Street League? Like the 7-inch racing? I'm not sure what 7 by 6 foot is for, but if you're looking for multi-GP style race gates, here is another place you can get them. The price is even pretty reasonable. Well, for what you're getting. And that is going to bring us to the end of the June 2023 new product roundup. I will see you next month with a whole new batch of new exciting products to check out. Thanks for watching.